Welcome to The Explainer. So today, we're diving into a really wild story about a man caught between his own skepticism and a promise he made to his devout mother. His mission? Well, it involves chasing the Pope to the ends of the earth just to ask a single profound question about what happens after we die.
In this journey, it's the personal quest of author Javier Cercas. Now, he's a committed atheist, but he sets off on this seemingly impossible mission, and it's not driven by his own beliefs at all, but by a promise to his deeply religious mother.
Okay, so what is this crazy mission? Well, as a self-described militant secularist, he makes this promise to his mom. He will find Pope Francis, ask him a very specific, very profound question, and bring the answer back to her.
Yeah, you heard that right. He's literally flying to Mongolia to ask the Pope if his mother will see his father again after she dies. And this whole thing sets up this incredible central conflict, a madman without God on a journey to understand a figure he calls the Madman of God.
Okay, so this phrase, Madman of God, who are we talking about here? It's Pope Francis, obviously, but to really get him, you've got to look at the guy he named himself after.
See, when Jorge Mario Bergoglio became Pope, picking the name Francis was a huge deal. It was a signal. He was deliberately tying himself to the original Loco de Dios, a man who stood for a church that was radical, poor, and missionary right to its core.
And this idea, it's pretty much the key to his whole papacy. His philosophy is that you can only really understand reality from the edges, from the confines, as he calls them, rather than from the comfortable, traditional centers of power. And this way of thinking, it drives everything he does.
And look, you can see this philosophy playing out in his travels. I mean, just look at this list. He consistently goes to nations that are often just off the radar for the West. And by doing so, he puts the edges of the world at the very center of his focus.
And this wasn't something he grew into. I mean, from his very first trip as Pope, this was the plan. He didn't jet off to London or Washington. Nope, he went to Lampedusa, an island at the absolute heart of the migrant crisis. And right there, he condemned what he called the globalization of indifference, a theme that would really come to define his entire papacy.
But, the Pope's vision, it isn't just some abstract, grand idea. It's something people are actually living out right now in some of the most extreme situations you can even imagine.
I mean, check this out. This is what it means to be a modern madman of God. You have this priest in Colombia, in one of the most violent cities on earth, who walks straight into a gunfight, and he's only armed with a sign offering sculpture classes. And it worked. The shooting stopped. He used art to stop a war.
And believe it or not, that story isn't some one-off thing. You've got people like Annalena Tinelli, a lay missionary who fought for women's rights in Somalia and was ultimately assassinated for it. Or priests in Mexico who are defending migrants from cartels. These people are the embodiment of radical service. They're on the front lines, living this philosophy every single day.
For our narrator, seeing all this incredibly profound, active faith, it just made his own lifelong intellectual doubt feel even sharper. This whole journey, it stopped being just about the Pope. It became about his own soul.
For him, losing his faith wasn't this slow, gradual thing. It was like a lightning strike. He's 14 years old, he reads a novel about a priest losing his faith, and boom, it's gone. From that point on, he's no longer a Catholic. He turns to literature, not for answers, but for even more questions.
And here's the thing. Losing his faith didn't bring him this sense of freedom you might expect. Instead, it brought this permanent anguish. He calls it a ball lodged in the throat, a constant companion that he's always trying to write his way out of.
So this is the real conflict, right? It's these two worlds colliding. On one side, you have his mother's faith, which is the simple, powerful, and comforting certainty that promises she'll see her loved ones again. And on the other, you've got his doubt, this restless, intellectual torment that offers zero peace.
So after this whole epic quest, this journey to the end of the world in Mongolia, he didn't get the simple yes or no he was looking for. But what he got was, well, it was something else entirely. Something way more profound.
So get this, he has this dream in Mongolia where he misses his flight home and has to stay with the missionaries. And in the dream, he realizes something totally shocking, that among these madmen of God, he, the atheist, the skeptic, felt like he belonged. He actually felt at home for the first time.
And that's when it started to click.
He began to understand what really drives these people. It wasn't about dogma or following rules. It was about this radical empathy that Pope Francis calls misericordia, which, I love this, he defines as when the misery of the other enters my heart.
What he learned from those missionaries in Mongolia was that real faith, it's not about what you say, it's about how you live. Evangelizing isn't about trying to convert people with arguments. It's about living a life of such profound service and empathy that your actions themselves become the message.
So, in the end, he leaves Mongolia without that simple answer for his mother. But he leaves with something so much bigger. The realization that maybe the whole point isn't about having the answers. Maybe the most profound act of faith isn't certainty, but the mad, beautiful, and relentless quest itself.